Nat's True Crime Podcast, and I'm going to talk about the Bridgewater
Lizzie
trial.
Borden.
Lizzie Andrew Borden, July 19th, 1862, June 1st, 1927, was a American woman tried and acquitted of the August 4th, 1892 axe murder of her father and her stepmother in Fall River. No one else was charged in the murders. Spite ostracism from other residents. Borden spent the remaining of her life in Fall River. She died of pneumonia at age 66, just days before the death of her older sister Emma. The Borden murders and trial received widespread publicity throughout the United States, and along with Borden herself, they remained a topic in American popular culture to the present day. That they have been in numerous films, theatrical productions, literary works, and folk rhymes, and are still very well known in the Fall River area. Lizzie Andrew Borden was born July 19th, 1860, in Fall River to Sarah Anthony Borden, Morse, 1823 to 1863, and father Andrew Jackson Borden, 1822 to 1892. Her father, who was of English descent and Welsh descent, grew up in very modest surroundings and struggled financially as a young man. Despite being the descendant of wealthy and influenced local residents, Andrew eventually prospered in the manufacture and sales of furniture and caskets. When became a successful property developer, he was a director of several textile mills and owned considerable commercial properties, and he was also president of the Union Savings Bank and a director of the Durfee Safe Deposit and Trust Company. At his death, his was valued at $300,000, equivalent to $9 million in 2021, and $9,630,000 in 2022. Despite his wealth, Andrew was known for his frugality. The Borden home lacked indoor plumbing, although at the time it was a combination for the wealth. It was in an affluent area, but the wealthiest residents of Fall River include Andrew's cousin, generally live in the more fashionable neighborhood, the Hills, which was fathered from the industrial area of the city. Borden and her older sister Emma Leon Borden, 1851 to 1927, had a relatively religious upbringing. Attended Central Congregation Church. As a young woman, Lizzie was very involved in the church activities, teaching Sunday school to children of recent immigrants to the United States. She was involved in organizations such as the Christian Evers Society, for which she served as secretary treasurer. Contemporary social movements such as the Women's Christian Union. She was also a member of the Ladies' Fruit and Flower Mission. 3 years after the death of Lizzie's mother, Sarah, Andrew married Abby Durfee Gray in 1829 to 1892. They started that she called her stepmother Mrs. Borden, or whether they had a cordial relationship. She believed that Abby had married her father for his wealth. Bridget Sullivan, who they called Maggie. The Borden's 25-year-old live-in maid who immigrated to the U.S. from Ireland, testified that Lizzie and Emma rarely ate meals with their parents. In May 1892, Andrew killed multiple pigeons in his barn with a hatchet. Believe they local children to hunt them. Lizzie had built a roost for the pigeons, and it was been commonly recounted that she was upset over his killing of them. Though the veracity of this has been and family angry in July 1892 wanted both sisters to take extended vacation in New Bedford after returning to Fall River a week before the murder. Lizzie chose to stay in a local rooming house for 4 days before returning to her family's residence. Tension has been growing within the Borden family in the month before the murders, over Andrew's gift of real estate to various branches of Abby's family after her stepmother's sister received a house. Sisters demanded a receipt of a rental property, a home that had lived in until their mother died, which they purchased from their father for $1. A few weeks before the murder, they sold the property back to their father for $5,000, equivalent to $151,000 in 2021. Before the murders, John Metchop Morse, the brother of Lizzie and Emma's deceased mother, visited and was invited to stay for a few days. Business matters with his brother-in-law Andrew. Some written have related they are particular about property transfer may have angered as already situation for several days before the murder. The entire household had been violently ill. A family friend later speculated that Mutnow left on the stove to use in meals over several days was the cause, but Abby had feared poison, given that Andrew had not been a popular man. John Morse arrived in the evening of August 3rd, slept in the guest room that night. After breakfast the next morning, at which Andrew, Abby, Lizzie, John, and the Bordens' maid, Bridget Maggie Sullivan, were present. Andrew and John went to the sitting room where they chatted for nearly an hour. Morse left around 9:48 a.m. to buy a pair of oxen and visit his niece in Fall River. Planning to return to the Borden house for lunch at noon, Andrew left for his morning walk sometime after 9 a.m. While the cleaning of the guest room was one of Lizzie and Emma's regular chores, Abby went upstairs sometime between 9 a.m. and 10:30 a.m. to make the bed. According to the forensic investigator, Abby was facing her killer at the time of the attack. She was first struck on the side of her head with a hatchet, which cut her just above the eyes, causing her to turn and fall face down on the floor, creating lesions on her nose and forehead. Her killer then struck her multiple times, delivering 17 more direct hits to the back of her head, killing her. When Andrew returned at around 10:30 a.m., his key failed to open the door, so he knocked. Sullivan went to unlock the door, found it jammed. She uttered a curse. She would later testify that she heard Lizzie laughing immediately after this. She did not see Lizzie, but stated that the laughing was coming from the top of the stairs. This was considered significant, as Abby was already dead but by this time, and her body would have been very visible to anyone on this home's second floor. Lizzie later decided to begin upstairs and testified that her father had asked her where Abby was, to which she replied that a message had delivered Abby a summons to visit a sick friend. Sullivan stated that she had then removed Andrew's boots and helped him into his slippers before that he laid down on the sofa for a nap. Detail contradicted by the crime scene photo, which showed Andrew wearing the boots. Sullivan then informed Lizzie of a department store sale. Lizzie said Sullivan was welcome to come along with her, but Sullivan felt unwell and wanted to take a nap in her bedroom instead. Sullivan testified that she was in her third floor bedroom resting from cleaning windows when, just before 11:10 a.m., she heard Lizzie calling from downstairs, "Maggie, come quick. Father's dead. Somebody came in and killed him." Andrew was slumped on a couch in the downstairs sitting room, struck 10 or 11 times with a hatchet-like weapon. One of his eyes had been split cleanly in two, suggesting that he had been asleep when attacked. Still bleeding wounds suggested a very recent attack. Dr. Brown, the family's physician, arrived from his home across the street, pronouncing both victims dead. Detectives estimated that Andrew's death had occurred at approximately 11 a.m. Investigation. Lizzie Borden initially answered to the police officers' questions were at times strange and contradictory. She reported hearing a groan or a scraping noise or a distress call before entering the house. 2 hours later, she told the police she had heard nothing and entered the house, not realizing that anything was wrong. When asked where her stepmother was, she recounted Abby received a notice and asked her to visit a sick friend. She also stated that she thought Abby had returned and asked if someone could go upstairs and look for her. Sullivan and a neighbor, Mrs. Churchill, were halfway up the stairs, then eyes level with the floor when they looked into the guest room and saw Abby laying face down on the floor. Most of the officers who interviewed Borden reported that they disliked her attitude. She said she was too calm and is decided. Despite her attitude and changing alibis, she was not checked for bloodstains. Police didn't search her room, but it was a cursory inspection. At the trial, they immediately to not do a proper search because Borden was not feeling well. They were stubbornly criticized for the lack of diligence. In the basement, police found 2 hatchets, 2 axes, and a hatchet head with a broken handle. The hatchet head was suspected of being the murder weapon. At the back in the handle, break in the handle, appeared fresh, and the ash of and dust on the head, unlikely they on the other bladed tools, appeared to have been deliberately applied to make it look like as if it hadn't been in the basement for some time. However, none of those tools were removed from the house. Because of the mystery illness that had sickened the household, before the murders. The family's milk and Andrew's and Abby's stomach removed during autopsy performance in the Borden dining table. Were tested for poison. None was found. Residents suspected Lizzie of purchasing hydrochloric acid in a diluted form for the local drugstore. Her defense was that she inquired about the acid in order to clean her furs. Testimony that the medical examiner testimony that it didn't not have antiseptic properties. Lizzie and Emma's friend Alice Russell decided to stay with them the night following the murders, while Moore spent the night in the attic guest room. Counted to later accounts that they have slept in the murder site guest room. Were stationed around the house on the night of August 4th, during which a officer said he had seen Borden enter the cellar carrying a kerosene lamp and a slop pail. He started to say both women exited the cellar, after which Borden returned alone. He had unable to see what she was doing. He started to approach. She was bent over the sink. On May 5th, Moss left the house and was mobbed by hundreds of people who had to escort him back to the house. On May 6th, police conducted a more thorough search of the house, inspecting the sisters' clothing and confiscating the broken-handled hatchet head. Informed police officers and the mayor visited the Borden, and Lizzie was informed that she was a suspect in the murder. The next morning, Russell entered the kitchen to find Borden tearing up a dress. She was explaining that she was planning to put it on the fire because it was covered in paint. It was never determined where it was. The dress she had been wearing on the day of the murders. Borden appeared at the inquest hearing on August 8th. Her request to have her family's attorney present was refused under a state statute provided that an inquest must be heard in private. She had been prescribed regularly dosing of morphine to calm her nerves, and it is possible that her testimony was affected by this. Her behavior was erratic, and she often refused to answer a question if the answer would be benefit to her. She often contradicted herself and provided accounts of the morning in question, such as saying she was in the kitchen reading a magazine when her father arrived home, then stated she was in dining room during his ironing, and then said she was coming down the stairs. She also said she removed her father's boots and put slippers on him, while the photograph clearly shows him still wearing his boots. The district attorney was very aggressive and confrontational. On August 11th, Borden was served with a warrant for her arrest and jail. Inquiry testimony that based for the Borden state regarding her guilt or was later ruled admissible at her trial in June 1893. Restricted newspaper articles noted that Borden a stolid demeanor but bit her lips, flushed and bent forward. Turned Adams. It was also reported that the testimony provided in the inquest had caused a change of opinion among her friends who have therefore strongly maintained her innocence. The inquest received signature press attention nationwide, includes a 3-page write-up in the Boston Globe. A grand justice began hearing evidence on November 7th, and Borden was indicted on December 2nd. Borden's trial took place in New Bedford starting on June 5th, 1893. The attorney was Jose M. Knowlton, a future U.S. Supreme Court Justice. William H. Moody defending were Andrew V. Jennings, Melvin O. Adams, a former governor, George D. Robinson. 5 days before the trial's commencement on June 1st, another axe murder occurred in Fall River. This time, the victim was Berta Manchester, who was found hacked to death in her kitchen. Similar between the Manchester and Borden's murders were striking and note by jurors. However, Jose Correa de Mello, a Portuguese immigrant, was later convicted of Manchester's murder in 1894 and was determined not to be in the vicinity of Fall River at the time of the Borden murders. Prominent point of discussion in the trial or president coverage of it was the hatchet head found in the basement, which was not convincingly traded by the prosecutor to be the murder weapon. Prosecutors argued that the killer had removed the handle because it had been covered in blood. The one officer testified that a hatchet handle was found near the hatchet head, but another officer contradicted this. No bloody clothing was found at the scene. Russell testified that on August 8th, 1892, she had witnessed Borden burn a dress in the kitchen stove, saying it had been ruined when she brushed against wet paint. During the course of the trial, defense never attempted to challenge this statement. Lizzie Borden, present at the home, was also a point of dispute during the trial. According to testimony, Sullivan entered the second floor of the home at around 10:58 a.m., left Lizzie and her father downstairs. Lizzie told several people that at this time she went into the barn and was not in the home for 20 minutes or possibly a half hour. Ivan Lubinsky testified for the defense that he saw Lizzie leave the barn at 11:03 a.m. Charles Garden confirmed the time at 11:10 a.m. Lizzie called Sullivan downstairs told her Andrew had been murdered and ordered her not to enter the room. Instead, Borden sent her to get a doctor. Both victims' heads had been removed during autopsy, and their skulls were admitted as evidence during the trial and present on June 5th, 1893. Upon seeing them in the courtroom, Borden fainted. Evidence was excluded that Borden had sought to purchase prussic acid, hydrogen peroxide, cyanide, reportedly from cleaning a skin cloak from a local druggist on the day before the murder. The judge ruled that the inclusive incident was too remote in the time to have any connection. The presiding Associate Justice, Justin Dewey, who had been appointed by Robinson when he was governor, delivering a summary that supported the defense as her his change to the justice before it was sent to had he his change to the justice before it was sent to debate on June 20th, 1893, after an hour and a half of deliberation, the justice acquitted Borden of the murders. Upon exiting the courthouse, she told reporters she was the happiest woman in the world. The trials have been compared to the latest trials of Bruno Hauptmann, Ethel and Julius Rosenberg, and O.J. Simpson as a landmark in public and public interest in the history of American legal proceedings. Though acquitted at trial, Borden remained the primary suspect in her father and stepmother's murder. Written Victory Lincoln proposed in 1967 that Borden may have committed the murders. While in a figure state, another prominent suggestion was that she was physically and sexually assaulted by her father, which drove her to kill him. There is little evidence to support this, but incest is not a topic that would have been decided at the time, and the method for collecting physical evidence would have to be quite different in 1892. This brief was intimated in local papers at the time of the murders and was revisited by Marcia Carlyle in a 1992 essay. Mystery author Evans Hunter, in his 1984 novel Lizzie, suggested that Borden committed the murders after being caught in a tryst with Sullivan. McBay elaborated on the speculation in a 1999 interview, speculating that Abby had caught Lizzie and Sullivan together and had reacted with horror and trust, and the Lizzie had killed Abby with a candlestick. When Andrew returned, she had confessed to him, but killed him in a rage with a hatchet when he reacted exactly as Abby had. McBain further speculated that Sullivan disposed of the hatchet somewhere after woods in her later years. Borden was rumored to be gay, but was not no such speculation about Sullivan, who found another employment after the murders and later married a man she met while working as a maid in Butte, Montana. She died in Butte, Montana, 1948, where she allegedly gave a deathbed confession to her sister, stating that she had changed her testimony on the stand in order to protect Borden. Another significant suspect is John Morris, Lizzie's maternal uncle, who rarely met with the family after his sister's death, but had slept in the house the night before the murders. According to law informant, Morse had previously has cerebrally perfect and over-detailed alibi for the death of Abby Borden. He was considered a suspect by the police for a period. Another note as possible suspects in the crime includes Sullivan, possible in retaliation for being ordered to clean the windows on a hot day. The day of the murders was unusually hot, and at the time she was still recovering from the mystery illness that had struck the household. A man named William Borden, suspected to be Andrew's legit son, was noted a possible suspect by writer Arnold Brown, who submitted in the book Lizzie Borden, The Legend That True, the final chapter, that William had tried and failed to extort money from his father. However, Arthur Leonardo Leonard Rebello did extensive research on William Borden in Brown's book and was able to provide he was not Andrew Borden's son. Actually, Emma had a alibi at Fairhaven, about 15 miles and 24 kilometers from Fall River. Crime writer Frank Spearing proposed in his 1984 book Lizzie that she might have secretly visited the residence to kill her parents before returning to Fairhaven to receive the telegram informing her of the murders. Early in life, after the trial, the Borden sisters moved into a large modern house in the Hills neighborhood in Fall River. Around the time Lizzie began using the name Lisbeth A. Borden at their new house, which Lisbeth dubbed Maplecroft, that they had a staff that included living-in maids, a housekeeper, and a coachman. become Abby was ruled to have died before Andrew. Her estate went first to Andrew and then at his death passed away to his daughter as part of the estate. A considerable settlement, however, was paid to settle claims by Abby's family. Despite the acquittal, Borden was authorized by Fall River Society. Her name was again blotting into the public eye when she was accused of shoplifting in 1897 in Providence, Rhode Island. In 1905, shortly after a argument over a party that Elizabeth had given from actress Nance O'Neill, Emma moved out of the house and never saw her sister again. Death. Borden was ill in her last years following the removal of her gallbladder. She died of pneumonia on June 1st, 1927 in Fall River. Funeral details were not published and few attended. 9 days later, Emma died from chronic nephritis at the age of 79 in a nursing home in Newmark, New Hampshire, having more moved to the location in 1927, both for health reasons and to avoid renewed attention following the publication of another book about the murders. The sisters, nothing of worry had ever, nothing. Neither of them were ever married, were buried side by side in their family plot in Oak Grove Cemetery. At the death of her, Borden was worth over $250,000, equivalent to $5,233,000 in 2021. She owned a house on the corner of French Street and Belmont Street. Several office buildings shared in several units, 2 cars, and a large amount of jewelry. She left $30,000, equivalent to $628,000 in 2021, to the Fall River Animal Rescue League, and $500, $10,000 in 2021 in trust for perpetual care of her father's grave. Her close friend and cousin each received $6,000, $126,000 today. Substantial sums of at the time of her real estate states. Distribution in 1927, a Numb family and friends members each received between $1,000, $21,000 in 2021, $5,000 is $105,000 in 2021. In culture, Scholar and Schofield note that Borden's story has a tendency to take one or the other two fictional forms, the tragic romance and the feminist quest, as the story of Lizzie Borden had been created and recreated through rhyme and fiction. It was taken on the follows of a popular American myth of legend that linked the present to the past. The Borden house is now a museum and opened a bed and breakfast with 1890 style pieces of evidence used in the trial. Includes the axe head preserved at the Fall River History Society. Folk rhyme. The case was memorialized in a popular skip rope rhyme to the tune of a popular song, Ta Ta Room Be I. Lizzie Borden took an axe and gave her mother 40 whacks. When she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41. Folklore say that the rhyme was made up by an anonymous writer as a tune to sell newspapers. Other attribute it to the ubiquitous but anonymous Mother Goose in Rail. Borden's stepmother suffered 18 or 19 blows. Her father suffered 11 blows. The rhyme has a lesser well-known second verse. Andrew Borden now is dead. Lizzie hit him on the head. Up in heaven he will sing. On the gallows she will swing. Borden has depicted in music, radio, films, theater, and television, often associated with the murders of which she was acquitted. Among the earlier portrayals on stage was John Colton in Carl Miles' 1933 play 9 Pine Street, in which Lillian Gitch played Effie Holden, at a character who was based on Borden. The play was not a success and ran from only 28 performances in 1947. William Delatour wrote a one-actor play, Goodbye, Miss Lizzie Borden. Other retellings includes New Faces of 1952, a 1952 Broadway musical with a number of titles, Lizzie Borden, which depicts the crime, as well as Agnes de Ballet, Fall River Legend, 1948, and the Jack B. Son opera, Lizzie Borden, 1964, both worked being based on Borden and the murders of her father and stepmother. Other plays based on Borden includes Blood Relations in 1980, a Canadian production written by Sharon Policki that recounted legends of up to the murder, which was made into a television movie. In Lizzie Borden, another musical adaptation, was also made, starring Tony nominee Allison Fraser. Cameron Matthews played Lizzie Borden in the Alfred Hitchcock present season 1 episode, The Older Sister, with Joan Luring as Emma and Hitchcock's daughter Pat as the servant Margaret. The episode arrived on January 22nd, 1953, and took place in 1893, with a determined woman reporter trying to interview the sisters 1 year after the murder, and ended with the revelation that Emma committed the murders. A March 24th, 1957 episode On the Bus presented two different adaptations of the Lizzie Borden story. The first, a play, The Trial of Lizzie Borden, with Catherine Barr as Lizzie. The second is a production of the Fall River Legend ballet with Nora Kay as the accused in 1959. The Legend of Lizzie by Reginald Lawrence. Detective page for Ann Meacham in the title role, but still closed after just 2 performances. The folk singing group, the Chad Mitchell Duo, recorded the black comedy song Lizzie Borden for its live 1961 album Mighty Day on Campus, released as a single and reached number 44 on the Billboard Hit 100 chart in 1962. ABC commissioned The Legend of Lizzie Borden in 1975, a television film starring Elizabeth Montgomery as Lizzie Borden, Kathy Helmet as Emma Borden, and Flannan LaFlanagan as Bridget Sullivan. It was later discovered after Montgomery died that she and Borden were in fact 6 cousins removed, with both descending from 17th century Massachusetts resident John Luther and Rhonda McClure. The Monk genealogy who documented the Natstruecrimepodcast Borden connection. I wonder how Elizabeth would have felt if she knew she was playing her own cousin. A Lifetime production, Lizzie Borden took an axe, 2014. Television film with Christina Ricci portrayed Borden, which was followed by the Lizzie Borden Chronicles in 2015. A limited series, a sequel to the television film, which present and fiction accounts of Borden's life after the trial. A feature film, Lizzie, in 2018, which with Chloe Sevigny as Borden and Kristen Stewart as Bridget Sullivan, depicted a lesbian tryst between Borden and Sullivan, which lead to the murder. In 2015, Supernatural aired an episode entitled Thin Lizzie. In the episode, Sam Jerry Padalecki and Dean Winchester as Jensen Ackles investigate the Lizzie Borden house after several people are murdered with an axe. They originally suspected that the ghost of Lizzie Borden is the one who is responsible for the murders, but they then discovered that she wasn't the murderer. The events of the murders in the trial, with actors portraying the people who were involved in them, have been recanted on the number of document programs. In 1939, the radio program Unsolved Mysteries broadcast a 15-minute dramatization titled The Lizzie Borden Case, which presented a possible scenario in which the murders were committed during a botched robbery attempted by a tramp who then escaped. Television recreations have included episodes of Biography, Second Verdict, History Mystery Case, reopened in 1999, and Mystery Decoded 2019, the Lizzie Borden Case, which was partly dramatized on a episode of the 2022 BBC Radio podcast series Lucy Russell's Lady Killers. In literature, Borden has been depicted in several Liberty works included The Fall River Axe Murders, a short story by Angela Carter, was published in her collection Black Venus, 1985. Another Borden-inspired story by Carter was Lizzie Tiger, in which Borden, imagined as a 4-year-old, had a story encounter at the circus. The story was published in 1993. Partially in the collecting American Ghosts and Old World Wonders. Miss Lizzie, a 1989 novel by Walter Satterthwaite, took place 3 years after the murder and recounted an unlikely friendship between Borden and a child, suspicions that arrived from the murder. Australian author Sarah Smith's 2017 novel Sees What I Have Done tells the story of the murders and the aftermath from the point of view of Lizzie and Borden, Emma Borden, Bridget Sullivan, and a Image Strange. It won the Mud Literary Prize for a debut novel. In Atherley Christie's novel Sleep and Murder, that main character Missy Marple said that murder was not present in the case of Madeline Smith, and Lizzie was acquitted, but many people believe both of those women were guilty. Thanks for watching my podcast.